We are continuing to look at the names of God, and today we're going to look at one that you've probably heard many times in your life if you've been a Christian very long and you've been in church, and there's even songs about this name, so it's kind of one of the more common that you hear often, and that is Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide. The Lord my provider. I love this one. I love them all. Let's see. If I had to pick my favorite, yes, that's my favorite, all of them. But Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. You know, that's something that we probably sometimes struggle in an area to believe that He actually will. I don't know if you're willing to admit that, but yeah, we sometimes struggle to believe that He actually will provide. We've asked Him, we've sought Him for something, we've asked Him again, we keep seeking, we don't see any movement, we don't understand. And you know what? We have to put our faith in the fact that we know and we believe that this is one of His names, this is one of His attributes, and even when I don't see movement, I know He will provide. He is a good Father, and He will provide for us, and He will provide the things that we need. I love the story in Genesis 22, we're not going to read the whole thing, but you could read that chapter for yourself. It would be a great chapter to read. But the story of Abraham and Isaac and how the Lord provided in that situation. And I just want to read a couple of verses here. In Genesis 22, we're going to read 11 through 14. It says, "But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, 'Abraham, Abraham.' So he said, 'Here I am.'" Now, what had happened before this passage is that the Lord told Abraham to take Isaac up to the mountain, and he was going to offer his son as a sacrifice. He told him to be prepared to give him as a sacrifice. And on the way up, Abraham said, "I know that the Lord will provide a lamb." And so in this moment, the angel of the Lord called to him and said, "Abraham," and Abraham said, "Here I am." And the angel said, "Do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Wow. I mean, you understand that Abraham was a real man. Abraham was human. Abraham was not an angel. Abraham was not some supernatural being. He was a man just like you and me. And no doubt, he loved his son Isaac. His only son. He loved his son Isaac. And yet he was willing to go up and be obedient. And on the way, he was willing to have the faith to believe that he was going to go up to that place. And that day he was going to encounter Jehovah Jireh, the Lord his provider. And the angel said to him, he said, "Don't lay a hand on him, because now I can see that you were willing to do what God asked you to do. I can see that because here you are." He had all of the wood on Isaac's back, bundled to him, heading up the mountain, ready to go through with this amazing, incredible act and sacrifice of obedience. And the angel said, "Don't lay a hand on him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, "The Lord will provide." Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide. As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord, it shall be provided. Maybe we need to find our way to the mount of the Lord and meet with Jehovah Jireh, our provider. Maybe that's your prayer closet. Maybe that's something that's standing in the way of you and your Heavenly Father. Maybe there's some act of obedience on your part that you need to do to clear the way to meet with Jehovah Jireh. Wow. This is such a parallel to the other amazing, final, perfect, everlasting provision of an only begotten Son, and that's found in John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. This story in the Old Testament is a foreshadowing, a type of that story of Jesus coming and God offering his only begotten Son. For God so loved the world that he gave. God provided, Jehovah Jireh provided the perfect, spotless lamb. He spared you and he spared me. See, he carried the sin that should have been ours. But Jehovah Jireh stepped in and said, I'm the Lord who provides. I'm the Lord who provides. I've always felt like if he never provided anything else for me, take the biggest need I have in my life, and if he never provided anything else for me, ever, the provision that he made on the cross of Calvary was more than enough. One, it bought my salvation. But the truth is, I still continue to receive from that provision by placing my faith in what he's done there. He paid the final act. He did it all. He provided, he bought and paid for everything we would ever have need of. If we just put our faith in that provision and say, yes, Lord, yes, I know you've provided for me because I know you are Jehovah Jireh, our provider. Matthew 6 and 8, there's a verse that tells us, it says, therefore, do not be like them. He has just been teaching the disciples. He's about to teach them how to pray. And he's talking about, don't pray like the hypocrites and the Pharisees and all of the people who pray for acknowledgement. He says in verse 8, therefore do not be like them, for your Father knows the things you have need of before you ask him. Before we even ask, he knows what we have need of. If he knows, won't he provide? I mean, what type of horrible parent would know there's a need of their children and not provide? Now, I'm not talking about everybody's got their reasons. Well, he didn't obey. Well, he did. I'm not talking about that. And some of that maybe we need to consider, again, when we're over here. I always say it this way. When I'm over here begging God to bless my finances, Lord, provide this miracle I need in my finances. Lord, provide what I have need of. And yet we're over here not being obedient to what he's already told us to do. Pay our tithe, pay our offering, give of our funds. He's laid something on our heart to do, and we're not doing it. And we're wanting him to be Jehovah Jireh, our provider, but we're not doing the part that we're supposed to do. So that, I understand that principle. I understand that. Totally understand that we have to be obedient, and in that obedient act we open up the windows of heaven for blessings in our life. So I understand that. But parents who have children that have a true need, you provide for them. Well, again, how much more so our Heavenly Father will provide for us. You know, the problem is sometimes we think he's not providing because he doesn't provide exactly what we asked for. That's where we get ourselves caught, because we're like, oh, well, I asked for this and that's not happening. The fact of the matter is, just the very fact that he provided in the way he did means he's still providing, because he's God in heaven. He knows what's best for us. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. He knows what's best for us. So we don't have to get hung up on the thing that we asked for. Lord, here's the need. And he will provide, because he is Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide. I think about the story. This is one of those stories that every preacher and minister probably on the planet has shared this story at some point. So I haven't shared it in a while. We'll see if I get it straight at all. But I'm reminded of the story of the man who it was flooding, and he was standing on the roof of his house, and he was praying for God to, save him. Just get me off of this. Lord, save me. It's flooding. Get me off. And so, a boat comes by, and hey, you can get in the boat. Come here, get in the boat. We've got room for you. Oh, no. The Lord's going to provide. And so they leave. And so then next thing you know, a helicopter comes by, and hey, we've got a ladder. We can drop it down and, save you. We can get you in the helicopter. Oh, no. The Lord will provide. I'm good. Thank you. And it ends up that the man ends up, dying and going to heaven, and he's standing before the Lord. Lord, I was standing there waiting for you to provide my need. And the Lord said, well, I sent a boat and a helicopter, and you didn't take either one of them. Sometimes we are so hung up on the picture of how we think God will provide our answer, will provide our need. We're so hung up on that we don't even notice when he's moving right in front of us and he's giving a solution and working something out. Or something else we do a lot is when he does provide, we go, wow, what a coincidence. I mean, that's amazing. I was needing that, and that person gave me that. We're just so Hello. We have Jehovah Jireh as our God. The Lord will provide. And sometimes we need to open our eyes and see His provision in our situation, even if it doesn't look like what we thought. He knows best. It's that old show, Father Knows Best. Well, guess what? Our Heavenly Father, He knows best what is best for us, and He's our provider. We often trust Him, I think, to save us. That's almost the easy part, I think. Probably for some it wasn't, but for me, I grew up in church, and I grew up wanting to please the Lord, and I got saved at a very young age, and praise the Lord, He kept me from ever rebelling from that. I always wanted to please Him and serve Him. And so to save me was kind of an easy thing. For Him to provide salvation for me was an easy thing. But sometimes we don't trust Him to carry our everyday load and need and our everyday situation. I also read a story about a man who was walking down the road, and he had a huge big backpack on his back, and he was carrying this load, and an old wagon came up. This story was told back in the day. I doubt that it's actually true, but it makes a great point. An old wagon pulled up beside the man, and he said, "Sir, I've got room in my wagon. You're welcome to get in. If you're going to the same place I am, I'll help you, get in here and take a load off." So the man got in the wagon with him, and he sat down. He still had that big pack on his back. It was huge. It was heavy. And they're going down the road a ways, and the driver of the wagon finally said to the man, you could take that off and put that in the back. I've got room in the back. You could, take a load off. And the man basically replied to the man. He said, "Oh, sir, it's enough that you would pick me up and carry me, but to ask you to carry my load too, that'd be too much to ask." It's a silly story, of course, because if he's in the wagon's carrying both of them. But it makes the point that is exactly what we do to our Heavenly Father. That's exactly what we do, because we trust the Lord to take care of us, but then we try to shoulder the load on our own. We try to carry the weight of our problems on our own, all while acting like and trying to pretend like we're trusting God to help us. I'm reminded of the passage in Matthew 11:28 that says, "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest." Our job is to come to Him. He said, "Come to me." That's our part. He says, "I will give you rest." So today, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord your provider, wants to give you rest, wants to provide your need, wants to be your all in all. He wants to provide for you because He is Jehovah Jireh. So today, can you sit down in the wagon and take your backpack off? Can you take your backpack off and go and put it in the back? He can carry you, and He can carry your burden. He can carry your load, and He will provide an answer. He will provide a way out. You just keep trusting, and you keep believing, and you keep your eyes on Jehovah Jireh.